Okay, we get a tricky one here. So for example 5, again, we have one of those compound inequalities where everything is all in one. Our goal is to get that variable or letter x on the inside by itself, and then make sure that our smallest number is on the left-hand side. Okay, so pluses and minuses separate your parts. So we have this part, which is a fraction, and then we have this plus 5. So the first thing that we need to move is our 5. Since it's plus, we are going to subtract 5 in all of our sections. -1 minus 5 is going to give us -6. We keep the signs the same. And then 2 minus 5 is going to give us -3. Okay, so again, you only change the sign when you are dividing by a negative number. Okay, so again, our goal is to get this x by itself. There's multiple ways to go about this. Technically, this is the same thing as saying 2/3 times x, right? So now this 2/3 is connected to the x by multiplication. So then you could divide each part by 2/3, or you could do it step by step. That's really up to you. Since it's being divided by 3, you could multiply each part by 3, and then you could divide each part by 2. I think that I am going to put them back together. I think it would be easier to work it the other way. If you're comfortable with dividing by a fraction, you can do that, but I'm going to stick with working this way, okay? So again, our goal is to get the x by itself. We have this divided by 3, which means we need to take each part and multiply it by 3. So I'm just going to take the whole thing and put a 3 on the outside, okay? So if I multiply this first one by 3, 6, 12, 18, right? So we get -18. Keep the sign the same. And then we're left with 2x because those 3's will cancel out when we multiply, right? And then when we multiply this by 3, we get -9. So again, we multiply this by 3, multiply this by 3, the 3's cancel, and then multiply the last part by 3, okay? So now our 2 is connected to the x by multiplication. So now we divide each part by 2. So instead of doing this 2-step process, again, if you wanted to, you could have just divided both of them by 2/3, divided by a fraction. And if you're comfortable with doing that, feel free to do that, okay? So, looks like I've lost my equal sign under there. Y'all see that? All right, so now we have -9 is less than or equal to x is less than or equal to -9/2, okay? So I'm going to write that on my other board. And while I'm doing that, remember we need to make sure that the smallest number is on the left-hand side. So is -9 actually smaller than -9/2? If you're unsure, you can change that fraction into a decimal, which would give you -4.5, right? So yes, in this case, if we're looking on a number line, it will be smaller. So we are good, okay? So here we are eating to the what? Right again, right? We have our little mouth. So we're eating to the right, which means we are eating healthy. So it's going to be on the inside of our body, okay? So I am going to write this out and add my numbers. We have -9 and we have -9/2, okay? So because we're eating to the right, we're shading the inside of our body. So that's going to be this portion right here. And because there's lines underneath it, that means we're including. So we're going to have closed circles on both of them. Okay, so awesome. If we wanted to write this in set interval notation, we have a closed circle, so that means that we're going to use a bracket. We have -9, and then we're going all the way to -9/2. And again, we have a bracket because we have a closed circle. Perfect. So these would be our solutions. This is interval notation. Oh, goodness. I'm so sorry. What was the example we did before this? Example 3, I think I said I wrote it in interval notation, and I'm not quite sure that I did. So, yeah, you guys can, oh no, wait, what example are we on? Oh, we're on example 5, yeah. On example 4, I don't think I wrote it in interval notation, I'm sorry. If you go back to your notes on example 4 for interval notation, that's going to be parentheses -3, comma 2, close parentheses. I'm so sorry about that. So this is going to be an interval notation for example 4. I'm sorry. So, but back to example 5, this is interval notation, and this is how we would show it graphically.